Junior doctors in England are preparing to stage the longest strike in NHS history, with medics due to walk out for 6 days in the escalation of the row, and it's starting today. I mean, where do you stand on this? Let's start with you again, Kevin. I mean, it seems to me today people have been called to be told that their appointments, their operations have been cancelled, heart operations, life-saving operations for a lot of people. Who do you have sympathy with here?
Oh, look, I've got huge sympathy with patients, but look, any industrial dispute, and I've covered industrial disputes going back to the late 80s, it takes two sides to talk. And both sides, the government is saying it won't talk while strikes are going on. Well, it's got to swallow its pride and talk. And the doctors have to go into those talks. We talk about junior doctors. They are 40% of the doctors in the NHS. This is in England. Scotland settled. Wales, there may be disputes later, and there is some balloting going on in Northern Ireland, but it's predominantly an English problem where the Conservative government has handled relations in the NHS terribly, which is why you had the nurses' strikes and you had the consultants' strikes.
But they are asking the junior doctors, they say 40% of the workforce in the NHS, which is the 5th largest employer in the entire world, they are asking for a 35% pay rise. Now, I think a lot of people watching will think a 35% pay rise is quite chunky.
It's not all today.
Hang on, let's
the key lands with public opinion, because that's when you'll know whether strikes are likely to be successful. So we've known that since strikes have begun over the last couple of years, that the strikes that have received the most public support have been nurses' strikes. Now they've settled, right? Because after COVID, they only offered a 2% pay rise, and the public were rightly outraged. And then at the bottom of that is university lecturers, because they are pumping out useless students and making our lives hell. You cannot keep this going and expect the public to have sympathy with you when you're asking for a 35% pay rise, because that is impossible. No one, not even the private sector, gets that.
But Esther, it's a lot more complicated than that. We know that they're asking for 35%, but what they're also saying is, don't give us 35% today,
because that won't happen.
We understand that you can't give it to us today, but in terms of making up our pay, that is what that figure would account for.
But hang on, what other employer, if you said I want a 35% pay increase, you don't have to give it to me right away, but you have to give it to me quite soon. I mean, it's
but
a tricky
Douglas, that
negotiation.
35% is going back to 2008. So a 15-year period. They took a bigger hit. The value of their earnings dropped more than ambulance crews, more than NHS workers, nurses.
And of course, inflation came in as well. And,
it's actually now down to 26%.
But
the government gave them 8.8% without settling the strike.
Their frustration is with their union as opposed to the government, because we've had successive governments since 2008. And I think the bigger point here is when you compare it to other countries like Australia, like the US, like Canada, all these countries saying they earn significantly less. They make 20% of their income goes towards their pension as well. So they have a very good package, actually.
The government are using this as a tactic, as a ploy. If they wanted to talk to the junior doctors, they could do. They did with other doctors. They did with the barristers. They're just refusing
because they weren't asking for 35%.
What they want to do is they want the NHS to be run down. We are watching the demise of the NHS. We need to support the junior doctors.
Maybe it needs to die.
We are always told that we're facing the demise of the NHS, and
we have got a particularly incompetent government when it comes to organising.
Maybe the NHS doesn't.
We also quite regularly have very incompetent governments, Kevin. So that's not an excuse either.